First video is called The Mollusk Tier List by Tierzoo. I don't even know what a mollusk is, so guess we're going to be learning a lot today. Is that a clam and an octopus? Oh. Might be a squid, actually. Oh, wait. I didn't even realize this was another... Oh, my God.
Mollusks are one of the most diverse factions in the entire game. Indeed, much more diverse than I think most players realize.
Cephalopod. Bro, what?
They're extremely popular both among casual and competitive players, with some builds demanding incredible levels of skill to pilot, while others are practically AFK. And with so many different potential mollusk builds to choose from, it can be difficult to know which builds are actually competitively viable in the current meta. So today, we're going to go through the mollusk tier list. While I attempt to cover as many of the popular well-known builds as I can, mollusks are an extremely broad category, second only to arthropods in terms of...
Oh. Okay, wait, so all of these are mollusks, but then there's cephalopod. That's like how does that... So what does a mollusk even mean then? Like, what constitutes something to be a mollusk? Gastropod, limpets, snails, leaf sheep. Dude, there's so much, bro. There's so much.
...of number of individual members. So inevitably, some are getting left out of this video for the sake of time. Still, by highlighting standout builds in both the high and low tiers, hopefully I can give you a good understanding of where the mollusk faction fits into the current metagame, and will be able to fill in the gaps for yourself. But before we dive into the tier list, what is a mollusk? And what are their common attributes? Mollusks are a huge group, encompassing all gastropods, all bivalves, and all cephalopods. While every group has its outliers, most factions at least have some consistency in their base stats. Birds tend to have pretty high mobility, mammals tend to have high intelligence, arthropods high defense, and so on. With mollusks though, it's pretty hard to pin down any obvious through line. Pick any one stat and you can probably find a mollusk both at the top and bottom of the charts. But one thing you will not find is a mollusk with basic middle-of-the-road stats. While the numbers and combinations will vary greatly between builds, one thing I've noticed is that just about every mollusk has something extreme about it, with at least one stat being either incredibly high or abysmally low. But anyway, given just how hard it is to generalize them, we may as well just dive straight into the tier list.
Okay, so that basically means like they're glass cannons. It's like whenever you're playing, you're starting up a new game, and then you just upgrade strength only. That's the only thing you upgrade. So everything else is at base stats. Or you pick a certain type of build to start off with, so then your base stat would be lower than like another person's base stat, and then you just only level up 2 or 3 skills, and then that's it. So they're really good at one thing and really bad at, you know, something else. Okay, I got it. Okay. Common slug.
At the bottom of F tier, we have the common slug. Now, while this build may look like it has all the downsides of the snail without any of the benefits of the snail's protective shell, yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it looks like. The garden slug genuinely has some of the worst stats in the entire game, with even its best stat being fairly mid. Its only defensive ability is its slime, which does help ward off attacks from insects. It's a double-edged...
I'd say I haven't been here either. I was at a family reunion.
...sword though, as their slime also leaves a trail, making slugs one of the easiest builds in the game to track down. Now, I will admit, there are some advantages to not having a shell, the main one being that slugs can slip through much smaller cracks, and hide underground much more easily. However, since they need to come out to feed anyway, this doesn't really help them avoid predation all that well. So with all these negatives and pretty much nothing else going for them, the snail without a shell is going in F tier.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's F.
Next in F tier, we have the common clam.
Wait. Maybe I missed it, but like, do snails provide offense? Like, how much damage do they do, like, per hit?
That exemplifies the extreme stat lines I was talking about to a T. With no eyes, terrible movement abilities, and no attacking moves, and no brain, the clam has to rely on only 2 stats, both of which are quite high. The first is their stealth, on account of the clam's surprisingly decent burrowing ability. By wedging themselves into the seabed, they can stay out of sight from most potential threats. But if an enemy manages to find them in spite of this, the clam has some of the heaviest armor of any mollusk, being able to deflect some pretty substantial damage. But with no ability to counterattack or escape, eventually a persistent attacker will deal enough damage to spell game over. Well, okay, technically clams can move, but I mean, come on. In the current meta, this just isn't enough. What's worse is that even though clams can burrow down to hide, in order to survive they need to filter feed, and to do that, they must poke their most vulnerable weak point above the surface of the seabed, giving away their hiding spot and opening themselves up to a devastating critical hit. At the top of F tier, we have the common snail.
Terrible.
The garden snail has most of the same weaknesses as the previous 2 entries on the tier list, but slightly less severe. Snails are every bit as slow and non-threatening as slugs, but they do at least have a shell to help block attacks. They can even use their shell to shield bash attackers in a pinch, though this doesn't do much damage. However, similar to the clam, because of how slow their movement speed is, and how weak their counterattacks are, eventually an aggressive player will be able to punch through their defenses. So they're not the worst of the worst, but compared to some of the unique and powerful abilities we'll see higher up on the tier list, the basic snail build just isn't going to cut it. At the bottom of D tier, we have the scallop. The scallop is essentially a more decked out version of the clam, though it has a...
I was just about to ask that, bro. I have no idea what the difference is. Still, like, everything in D and F just has nothing but straight defense, bro. It's just an all defensive build.
Lower base defense stat than the clam, its weaknesses are also much less pronounced. Instead of being completely
They can
immobile,
move.
scallops, oddly enough, have the jet propulsion ability, something usually only found in cephalopods and box jellies. Though it has a high cooldown, this ability gives them an escape option if they're ever under direct attack, something every other build on this list so far desperately needs. Of course, being able to flee from battle wouldn't do them much good if they couldn't see attacks coming, but thankfully scallops also spec into primitive eyes, enabling them to detect predators and reposition themselves accordingly. In theory, anyway. One of the issues with simple eyes is that even the most basic stealth techniques, such as, for example, moving very slowly, can get past their danger sense, resulting in the scallops getting regularly bodied by starfish. So, while they're definitely a bit more versatile than some mollusks, I can't give them too much credit. Next, in D tier, we're going to have the first of the cephalopods on our tier list, the chambered nautilus. The nautilus is a slow-moving, armored scavenger build that sustains itself mostly on detritus and carrion that is sunk to the bottom of the sea.
Bro, I've never seen this before, bro. What is that? Like, nah.
Being able to swim
I ain't
while
gonna lie,
rocking
bro.
their shell is impressive. Their terrible swim speed shows just how power crept this ancient build has gotten. Their perception stat is
Keep
also
this shit away
pretty
from me,
mid,
bro.
Especially for how power crept this ancient build has gotten. Their perception stat is
What is this? Is this a mouth or an asshole? What is that?
also pretty mid, especially for a cephalopod, which on average have some of the best vision of any marine build. The Nautilus used to be a much more popular build until seals and sea lions were added to the game, as their high agility and armor-piercing bite gave them a crushing matchup versus the Nautilus. So, while it is impressive that the Nautilus has made it through some of the roughest balanced patches in the game's history, the fact that they were driven to the depths by seals doesn't scream high tier to me. First, in C tier, we have the Geographic Cone. This marine snail build rocks pretty much all the same strengths and weaknesses as your average snail, with one major exception. This snail can one-shot just about anything. The Geographic Cone has a venomous harpoon which it uses to hunt fish, but it can also use it to defend itself in a pinch. Now, the Geographic Cone is still incredibly slow and really not all that stealthy, so actually landing a hit on a fish is a bit of a challenge. Still, this is one gastropod you really don't want to underestimate. The cone snail's harpoon pierces armor, so any starfish main who thinks that all mollusks are easy pickings is in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Just don't get near it. It just don't got it don't get real high like range. And the worst thing is having a low range with like a one-hit KO attack, kind of like a what's it called, guillotine. And then you just have low accuracy, bro. You're cooked. I'm not gonna lie. But it's balanced, though. It's balanced. So, yeah, I understand why it's in C then.
Next in C tier, we have the Dumbo Octopus. This is one of the strangest cephalopod builds
that?
in the entire game, and lacks a lot of the signature abilities players normally associate with the octopus. But it also has a mix of other unique traits that normal octopuses don't. You see, the Dumbo Octopus is a deep sea build, and on that server, the normal stealth techniques simply don't apply. Color changing and ink clouds aren't going to do a player any good when most of the major threats aren't relying on vision anyway. So
but why does it
those
look like that?
Are what the octopus is best known for, unfortunately the Dumbo Octopus has to find other ways to remain hidden from predators. And unfortunately this means it needed to make even more trade-offs. Rather than using jet propulsion, which is a conspicuous and turbulent, but incredibly effective movement ability, the Dumbo Octopus swims using large fins on the side of its mantle. This is significantly slower, but a great deal stealthier too. This makes it too slow to catch fish, but it's still able to thrive off of its winning matchup versus crustaceans. Its webbed tentacles are perfect for surrounding and capturing targets on the seafloor. So definitely an interesting build, but by having to sacrifice so much of what makes the octopus so overpowered, the Dumbo octopus is definitely one of the lower tier ones.
Makes sense.
And at the top of C tier, we also have the first squid on our list, the bobtail squid. This is another cephalopod which uses a fairly unorthodox ability to boost its stealth. As one of the smallest cephalopods in the game, the bobtail squid really cannot take any hits. So, in order to avoid most of the ocean's major threats, the bobtail buries itself during the day and only comes out at night. However,
Okay.
even under cover of darkness, the bobtail squid would still be at risk of being attacked. Though it's somewhat counterintuitive, on a night where the moon and stars are unobscured, detecting another player in the water isn't as hard as you might think. The shadows they cast in the water are highly visible and give away a player's location immediately, making it very easy for predators lurking below to strike. The bobtail squid deals with this by speccing into an extremely rare and strange ability, bioluminescence. It may seem backwards to hide by glowing, but doing so obscures the squid by removing its shadow. Of course, this does make them easier to detect from above, but attacks at night from seabirds are much less common. The bobtail may have the lowest stats of any cephalopod, but its unique and creative way of hiding in plain sight keeps it out of the low tiers. I can't give it too much credit though, because while its strategy for stealth at night is clever, honestly it's not that good at hiding during the daytime, having a seemingly worse ability to camouflage itself due to its bright coloration. At the bottom of B tier, we have the leaf sheep, a sea slug with a truly unique ability called kleptoplasty. Leaf sheep.
What the hell is that? This is real?
The leaf sheep, a sea slug with a truly unique ability called kleptoplasty. Leaf sheep is able to absorb the chloroplasts from the algae it consumes, essentially stealing the algae's photosynthesis ability. This ability generates XP passively over time, allowing them to grow, heal, and regenerate their energy without eating. It's hard to overstate how game-breaking this ability would be if it weren't on a character with otherwise pathetic base stats.
And they always do that, bro. They always put the really, really cool abilities on, like, shitters. I think it's really for team balancing purposes, because then, like, you get into a competitive, like, PvP, and you're not going to expect, you're going to see a leaf sheep, you're going to be like, oh, dude, I'm going to one-shot this. But they're going to forget, because you didn't study or you don't see it too often, that the leaf sheep actually has a really, really unique ability to, like, heal itself and do all this other stuff and, like, absorb in ways that no other mollusk can. So then now you're kind of fucked up because you're like, oh, you think it's gonna go one way, but really, you might gotta hit them books again. You know what I'm saying? He could be a real sleeper pick, bro. I'm not gonna lie. He might be on the squad just off of that alone.
For a human, this would basically be like if sitting in the sun provided you with the same benefits as eating well and working out. Unlike some of the sea slugs higher up on this list, the leaf sheep doesn't really have any defensive abilities. But if you want a character that is extremely forgiving in terms of the resource management side of things, the leaf sheep may actually be the best build in the game for anyone looking for that chill casual playstyle.
I'm gonna say that's some cozy, like, I just want to go around and just loot. You know what I'm saying? The loot goblins would love that. You know what I'm saying? Like me.
On pretty much the exact opposite end of the spectrum, next in B tier we have the giant squid. Now obviously this thing's HP stat is extreme, with it being the largest mollusk in the game. But one thing I bet you weren't expecting was for it to also have the highest perception stat of any mollusk. I mentioned before that in the dark depths of the ocean, the normal stealth mechanics don't apply. Well, the giant squid is the exception to this. Its eyes are so large, the largest in the game in fact, that even with only a tiny fraction of a percent of sunlight making it to the depths, the giant squid can still see. This is bad news for all the deep sea builds that assumed camouflage wasn't necessary and spec'd their character accordingly. This incredible eyesight is necessary for more than just hunting though. Being gigantic unfortunately makes you extremely easy to detect via echolocation, so they have to remain vigilant constantly to avoid being ambushed by the Abyssal server's true apex predator. Luckily, their vision has a range just barely more than that of the whale's sonar, so as long as they're on top of their game, they should be able to outmaneuver and avoid attacks.
That's crazy. I didn't know they could see, like, well, to be fair, if you're deep sea, it's gonna be dark, I feel like, most of the time. So, like, I guess they would have to just adapt or perish at that point, you know what I mean? So their eyes are just see really well down there. That's crazy.
On this same
Makes sense,
tier,
though.
I'm also going to include the colossal squid. which has many of the same traits as the giant squid, including massive eyes and incredible dark vision. The colossal squid does have a few subtle differences in its kit though. It's slightly heavier, but also less mobile, relying on ambushes using its 2 extra long arms to capture prey, as opposed to the giant squid's more traditional method of rushing down a target with an array of tentacles. The colossal squid also has hooks on its arms, which do more damage and can inflict bleed buildup, making them much more dangerous for whales to attack, making up for their slower swim speed. However, at the end of the day, both the giant
So bro has a strength and arcane build. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay.
squid and colossal squid have terrible matchups against whales, and because of their large size, their energy upkeep costs are insane. So they have to play pretty much a perfect game to avoid getting smoked. Both
Makes
are
sense.
powerful builds if you know what you're doing, but not without their limitations.
Yeah.
At the bottom of A tier, we have another sea slug, the blue sea dragon. Similar to the leaf sheep, this slug also has the power to copy the ability of its main food source, but in this case, the blue dragon isn't consuming algae, it's consuming jellyfish. The blue sea dragon is able to absorb the venomous nematocysts from the tentacles of their prey, and in doing so, gains a massive buff in the form of an equally deadly sting at the tip of its frills. This is incredible, as the blue sea dragon is able to gain the most powerful ability of the jellyfish faction without any of the awful downsides, like, being literally brainless and having no control over their own movement. Blue sea dragons also have much better stealth than a lot of sea slugs, using the counter-shading technique with a bright underbelly and dark blue backside, making them hard to see both from above and below. While not quite as OP as some of the cephalopod mollusks, the blue sea dragon definitely stands above all other slugs and snails as a unique and formidable outlier. Next in A tier we have the common octopus, a solid representative of the octopus faction as a whole. It possesses the core abilities that define the octopus build, along with its inherent vulnerabilities. Its 2 standout strengths are stealth and intelligence. The common octopus boasts some of the best stealth in the game, capable of changing both its color and texture to blend seamlessly into virtually any environment.
That's
Dense weeds,
crazy.
jagged rocks, or barren seabeds. And if its camouflage fails and it's ever spotted, it can deploy an ink cloud to temporarily debuff the attacker's perception stat, usually buying enough time to escape. However, escape is often its only viable option, as the octopus has some of the lowest defenses in the game. With no armor whatsoever, any hit it takes can deal devastating damage. Even in a server as perilous as the ocean, where threats abound regardless of armor, the common octopus must play cautiously. Bites from everyday fish can pose a serious risk, so despite its impressive abilities, it requires careful strategy to survive. Speaking of bites though, one lesser
So he like a Spider-Man BP. You kind of just have him in the cut on some stealth shit, and then he pop out, boom, take out the supports, the squishies. Because I don't think he does that much damage either.
known but important ability the octopus has is venom, which it delivers via a bite with its sharp beak. Finally, now's as good a time as any to say that although it's not a combat weakness, the octopus's biggest weakness is its low lifespan. Given that a lot of the octopus's best tricks need to be learned, either by observation or trial and error, the octopus's already powerful intelligence would be a lot more powerful if the devs allowed it to be refined over the course of a few decades, like dolphins, parrots, and humans get. This weakness is pervasive through the entire cephalopod faction, which is interesting because some of the other mollusks are pretty much the exact opposite. But yeah, this is why despite their many overpowered abilities, it's hard to give any cephalopods a top tier rank unless they're truly broken in even more ways than usual. Ranking slightly higher in A tier, the giant octopus adapts on the octopus archetype with one minor tweak, trading some stealth for greater strength. While it retains the ability to change color and texture to blend into its surroundings, and can deploy an ink cloud to escape threats, it's less adept at stealth than the common octopus due to its larger size, which makes it more noticeable when moving. However, this trade-off comes with significant advantages. Its above-average bulk gives it a wider margin of error in confrontations. Unlike the typically less brawny octopus builds, the giant octopus boasts impressive physical power, with arms capable of wrestling mid-sized sharks and a beak that deals substantial slicing damage, in addition to being venomous. It also shares the same high intelligence that other octopuses do, enabling it to tackle problems and improvise solutions on the spot. Though it shares the same lack of armor as other octopuses,
Wait, does it have a longer lifespan?
leaving it exposed to heavy damage, the giant octopus's
I fuck with the Sparking Zero UI gang.
enhanced strength and unique abilities more than offset its reduced stealth, marking it as a force to be reckoned with. Next in A tier we have the Humboldt squid, also known as the Red Devil. The Humboldt squid is the wolf of the ocean. It doesn't have the best stats in any one category. It's not the fastest, it's not the largest, and it's not the deadliest. However, it is well above average in all of those categories.
Oh, it's balanced.
And that, plus some impressive hunting tactics, makes it one of the most fearsome mollusks in the game. During the day, Humboldt squid mains hang out in the deep sea out of sight. But as it gets dark, the hunt begins, and the squid rise from the depths to attack. They hunt in packs, coordinating with each other via pulsing red and white light. These feeding frenzies can tear through schools of fish in an instant, and then return back to the depths before builds like the dolphin can arrive to challenge them. Now, obviously, communicating with light pulses has the disadvantage of giving away your location, so faster characters will usually be able to avoid getting caught in the frenzy. But still, the fear factor alone of getting caught surrounded by large glowing red squid has to earn it a spot in A tier.
Makes sense to me.
And last in A tier, we have the Mimic Octopus. The Mimic Octopus is a smaller mollusk with below average stats for its archetype. However, the Mimic Octopus uses its color change ability in a truly unique way, to shapeshift into the form of other marine characters. In doing so, it can trick other players into misplaying in many different ways. The most obvious strategy is just to mimic a character with a powerful venomous ability, like a lionfish or sea snake. This will cause predators to leave you alone for fear of getting stung or bitten. But this technique can also be used on offense to trick a target into a false sense of security, by mimicking something less dangerous like a starfish or flatfish. Now, while this is all extremely impressive, it's worth noting that the Mimic Octopus's options are fairly limited. It's most effective at mimicking characters that already share its black and white stripe appearance. When it attempts to mimic
it doesn't have the
it's a
camo.
lot less convincing. And if their disguise fails, their below average base stats leave them in a pretty vulnerable position should an enemy attack. A high skill, high reward technique, and one that deserves some pretty high recognition, but one that's also easy to overestimate. It's clever, but not quite broken. Okay, we've finally reached the S tier. If you've watched up until this point and are enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to subscribe to the channel. Thanks. At the bottom of S tier, we have another small mollusk with blue accents. The blue-ringed octopus.
We already subbed, gang.
This is one of the smallest octopus
I was going to like
the
this
game,
shit, though.
but you wouldn't know it if all you saw was its power stat. The blue-ringed octopus has the deadliest venom of any mollusk, even deadlier than the geographic cone.
Oh!
Its venom is the same neurotoxin found
Hold
in
on, this is my
pufferfish.
type of build right here. I'll probably trade a little bit of that. Nah. Because you kind of need the perception and stealth here. At least, like, on the underwater servers. So I'm thinking I'd lower intelligence a little bit. I would actually, because this is about 70. I would lower intelligence to 50 and then give another 10 to defense. Actually, and then just put another 20 on defense. Personally, that's what I would do. I would go up to like 40 on defense, because then it would be a little bit more like even. You know what I mean? But he does have a low HP stat, so that's kind of cut.
One shot almost anything within
cooked.
only a few minutes. Because of the blue-ringed octopus's insanely high damage, this build opts for the aposomatism technique, where rather than attempting to hide from predators using camouflage, when threatened, it instead boldly asserts its presence with vibrant neon blue markings all along its body. In doing so, it is essentially flexing on other predator players, saying it has no reason to fear them and daring them to make a move. This strat is common among players with powerful toxic abilities, and most players quickly learn that bright colors...
Having the lowest, or not the lowest, but like having one of the lowest HP stats and then just spamming emote whenever enemies get around you is actually kind of badass. I'm not gonna lie. I fuck with him.
Now, one of the usual drawbacks of this ability is that it dramatically cuts the player's own stealth stat. While this trade-off makes sense when it comes to scaring off predators,
how the fuck did we get on a frog? Wait, whoa, what just happened?
To make a move. This strat is common among players with powerful toxic abilities, and most players quickly learn that bright colors mean danger. Now, one of the usual drawbacks of this ability is that it dramatically cuts the player's own stealth stat. While this trade-off makes sense when it comes to scaring off predators, if you're a predator yourself, this makes the task of catching prey harder, as they'll be able to see you coming more easily. But because of the octopus's innate color change ability, the blue-ringed octopus is able to switch its intimidation ability on and off, allowing it to remain stealthy when it needs to. Now, of course, because it's on the small side, there's always a chance an opponent could overwhelm the octopus and take it down before it has a chance to counterattack. But more often than not, this small octopus is turning the tide on anything that dares challenge it. While it's definitely a glass cannon, the blue-ringed octopus's incredible stats and unique ability to subvert one of its major weaknesses earns it a spot in S tier. And on the topic of subverting weaknesses, next in S tier we have the coconut octopus. This is the octopus build with the highest intelligence stat of any mollusk, and the only one that makes tool use a core part of its strategy. The octopus's biggest weakness is its pathetic defense stat, and this was actually a direct nerf to overpowered cephalopod builds of the past. Many cephalopods used to have thick, sturdy shells like other mollusks do, way back during the Ordovician expansion. By using their incredibly high intelligence and tool usability, the coconut octopus is able to regain access to heavy armor by equipping the shells of defeated scallops and clams. This makes...
Yo, bro, he's moving like that one crab, bro, from this game. Bro, he's moving like that crab from the from Another Crab's Treasure. Because every time you kill something or whatever, like, you could take the shell and then use, like, different shells and stuff like that. Oh, that's hard. I didn't know that's where they got that from.
Makes them much less vulnerable to being picked off by a random attack from a fish or bird. In addition, kind of similar to the mimic octopus, most players don't have their guard up around a clam, so the shells also provide excellent cover to ambush opponents from. And after scoring a win, they can retreat to the safety of their shell to avoid getting it stolen, similar to leopards dragging their food up into trees to avoid hyenas. But shells aren't the only tools the coconut octopus has learned to incorporate into its combat repertoire. Using its water siphon, it can also launch debris at fish, making them one of the only builds in the game with access to a ranged attack. This is excellent at dealing chip damage without leaving the safety of the shell, meaning they don't fall into the same trap as clams by relying on defense with no means of counterattacking. Overall, this is truly one of the most impressive showcases of tool use in the entire game, other than humans.
True.
As it legitimately subverts one of the weaknesses of the typical octopus build without sacrificing any of the perks. An easy S tier rank.
Yeah.
And now
I think it's just map knowledge. Or,
cuddle.
like, map knowledge and just, like, knowing, like, what the other team has to offer and how you can benefit off of that, too. Yeah, that's pretty solid for us. I don't know about that other one, though, bro. I don't know about it. Like, glass cannon builds in S is kind of crazy, but I get it. Probably just because A is overcrowded, to be honest. But, like, I get it, though. I get it. I fuck with him, too. But both of them got, like, low-ass defense, though, bro. Like, it's crazy because these are all, like, pretty much all bark, no bite down here. Just straight defensive builds. With, like, a couple, like, unique abilities. But, like, again, they're so low on the totem pole, like, no one's really going to use them just for that. But then you got these guys up here where it's just, like, they just throw hands. That's it. You know what I'm saying? Throw hands, boom, 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 go back into hiding. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. This guy being able to, like, increase his defense stat without having to, like, lower anything else does kind of, like, I'm kind of curious to see, like, what the next one is going to be, because he seems to be the best one so far.
An easy S tier rank.
Cuttlefish.
And now our final S tier, the Cuttlefish. The Cuttlefish has a number of impressive stats, including quite literally the highest stealth stat in the game.
Oh.
It has the most advanced version of the color change ability, and is able to swap between colors at such an incredible rate that it can basically animate its skin. This means that, in addition to standard camouflage, the Cuttlefish can also use its appearance to confuse and hypnotize its prey, or startle and intimidate its predators. Though it may not have the ability to fire projectiles like the coconut octopus, its grappling arms give it a deceptively long reach, often catching players off guard and setting them up to get comboed with the Cuttlefish's venomous bite. Even though the Cuttlefish has no abilities which buff its defense, actually landing a hit on this agile and mesmerizing character is genuinely one of the most difficult things in the game. Their speed stat is a lot closer to that of a squid than an octopus, even though the rest of their abilities all align much more closely to the octopus. The Cuttlefish combines the most powerful elements from both the squid, like high maneuverability and long reach, and the octopus, like intelligence, venom, and color changing, into one overpowered build. And for that, I'm ranking it as the #1 mollusk in the game. And that's the tier list. Overall, the viability of mollusks is super inconsistent. Best cephalopods are truly busted, but the faction is also filled with a lot of suboptimal jank and AFK farming builds. So there really is something for everyone here, from meta tryhards to low-tier heroes. Now, knowing which traits and abilities to invest in can be a difficult choice. Luckily for you, I've partnered with the game Cell to Singular.
Oh, that's a good vid, though. What? You rank Cuttlefish above all octopus? Oh, Octopus Lady. They're all inferior to the Cuttlefish. They're reported to channel block kills. Using a non-reflection on my biases and expertise. don't shit either. We got Mollusk beef before GTA 6. What the fuck? Chance for a standard guard. Born immortal? Soul linked to a human. 1 in 200 billion chance? Where is this written at? Out of curiosity. I don't know if it's a real thing or not. But that's cool though. To be soul linked to a snail. Would I know if I was soul linked to a snail? I don't know. Maybe.